wish some of that could be recorded. People could hear. You should hear what's happening in Mongolia. Oh, I'm already taking John's message. All right, I'll stop now. They have 4 children, and John really basically works with 34 field strategy coordinators. It's a key position and worldwide. So we are glad, very glad to have John with us this morning, and may God add a blessing to your presentation this morning, John. Bless the Lord.
Well, good morning. It's wonderful to be with you and to meet some folks that I've known for a long time, and maybe I'll mention that as we get going here. I want to thank Ivan for a wonderful place to stay last night. Thanks for that. I slept like a baby. That's a baby who doesn't cry through the night. I just slept really well. So I'd like you to meet our family, and these are our kids, four kids and seven grandchildren. And I wish they could be with you this morning, but we're enjoying being back in the States. For a long time, we've had 6 grandsons, and for 20 years, actually. And we were in a convention about 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago, and the woman who introduced me and Vicki said, "I think they need to have a granddaughter, don't you?" And so they laid hands on Vicki, not that she would have a baby, but that somebody, and they prayed that we would have a granddaughter. Well, guess what happened? Little Ellie Mae was born. She doesn't like me. She likes Vicki, and Vicki loves it because all the grandsons love me, but they don't spend time with her as much as they do with me. But this little girl only likes Vicki, so she loves that. And so I want to talk with you about a movement of God by you. You're making it happen. I'm going to demonstrate that in the next few minutes. If you were to back up and look at this little blue marble that we live on and ask yourself, what would the Church of the Nazarene look like if I could see it all around the world? You would see an amazing network of relationships, a matrix of friendships, and people who are following Christ into the Father's mission to redeem all that He has created in His cosmos. You would find people, thousands of emails every single day, Zoom calls every single day among the 2.6 million Nazarenes around the world who are strategically thinking about how to distribute the gospel. You are in more countries as a Nazarene than Starbucks or McDonald's. You are an international family of people. And you are one church out of tens of thousands in one country of over 164 countries. And you are a part of a church that speaks a lot of languages. You're going to have a Spanish service here this afternoon, but just think of 193 this morning sharing the gospel through your work. All of those people like you are connected to a local church like this one here in Escondido. You're a member. You believe in what we're doing. And all those local churches are connected to over 500 districts around the world. You're a part of the Southern California district. And all those districts are connected to fields in global mission areas. There are 34 of them. And those fields and churches are all connected to a region. You're on the USA-Canada region. There are 6 of those. And they are all connected to a general assembly that met just 2 weeks ago in Indianapolis, once every 4 years. And you elect a general board, an international board made up of people from all over the world. It's a beautiful mosaic of God's handiwork, a lot like Revelations, where every tribe and language and people group, with all the costumes and all the foods and all the temperatures, gather to worship Christ in that first worship service. You are one of a handful of denominations that is structured like I just shared with you. You literally could not find more than you have on 10 fingers. It makes you unique. And it also makes you unique because you, per capita, per person, give more to missions than any other denomination in the world other than Christian Missionary Alliance. And that's according to Christianity Magazine, one of the top evangelical magazines in the world. It's why Bill Bright, Campus Crusade for Christ, just up the road from you here, in the 70s, looked for a denomination that could distribute the Jesus film. You know who his board of directors selected? You. So you support over 920 of these teams through your missions giving. Every time you give to missions, this little card you're going to fill out, that's what you're buying. Those helmets, the backpacks, the Jesus films, all that it requires. Vicki and I have seen those motorbikes still in the crates in countries to be distributed. It's why people like this tribal group that had never heard the name of Jesus until you put the film up on a screen in their village. And I was there. There were over 300 of them that said, we want to follow Jesus at the close of that film. Now you have a problem. How are you going to fix it? Well, you do, because you send these guys and teams like this all over the world in third world areas, the majority world. You pay them a stipend, you put them on that motorbike, and they go back into that village and they do what the mission of the Church of the Nazarene is: make Christ-like disciples in the nations. That's what we do. It's who we are. It's why you're connected to Turkey and Syria today like very few churches, because your pastors in Aleppo and other places are responding to that horrendous earthquake they had that killed 60, 70,000 people. It's why you're connected to Ukraine today. You've been watching that this last week. You have churches in Russia, pastors in Russia. You have child development centers in Russia and Ukraine. You have rehabilitation centers in Ukraine and Russia. And it's what you and I do. When you pray for one side or the other, don't pray for a side, pray for the kingdom. God loves everyone. Doesn't matter what your government is. He's out to find everybody and reconnect them. So you have a big problem in Ukraine because there are 13 million homeless people because of the war. Now think of that. They have to go somewhere. Imagine coming to Escondido tomorrow morning and it was off the map. There was no place to live here. You did not have a home, but you were still alive. Where are you going to go? Well, you are providing places for people to go. Remember those 34 fields Terry talked about? Those field directors, here's 2 of them, respond by organizing your love to go in strategically to those areas and help where the governments are missing, where NGOs are missing, and you respond with care. So your field director is connected to the general superintendent. His wife is a graduate of PLNU, just down the road here. And then the pastor here in this picture works with his people. This is Moldova, to take the goods that you've delivered through Nazarene Compassionate Ministries to the border, receive refugees, take them into their homes, and give them a bedroom until they can get on. And the churches have all been turned in to refugee centers. This is just one package of stuff you sent through Nazarene Compassionate Ministries to Ukraine. You've sent several of these. I preached in this little church. Look what they've done to it. It's a bedroom. Imagine coming in here next Sunday and there were just beds all through here and refugees from whatever trauma you have in this area. And then you operate this welcoming center where one of the field strategy coordinators, the spouse and workers go to the border, an 8-hour drive. They receive the women and children, bring them here, and they keep them until they are able to move on. You buy a train ticket for them through this. That's what you're doing. You sometimes say, where's my money going? Well, it's buying a ticket for a mom and a child to get someplace that's safe for long term. And then you run trauma recovery training. This is your district superintendent with a professional. I mean, I've never been traumatized like these people have been traumatized, but I care, and I want to do something to show my love and God's love. And so here you're training Nazarenes how to receive people who've been traumatized and actually help them Instead of offering cliches or something, you actually know how to enter into their suffering. And then you run in Ukraine 10 rehabilitation centers. There's our recent field strategy coordinator there with one of our missionaries and a man in the program, the men's and women's centers that take people addicted. You have these all over the world, but this is just Ukraine I'm talking about for a moment. Then you run micro businesses. So in partnership with Point Loma Nazarene University and other universities in this country and other countries, you loan money through this strategically. That field director decides, okay, we can start this and help these guys get a job so they're not tempted to drink vodka and they can support their family. And so they go to one of your rehab centers where they have a 14-step program to get them out of alcohol, and they live there for at least a year and then go back into the community. Many of them have become pastors. Many of them. Not just 2 or 3, but many. You own this pond in Ukraine. Did you know that Escondido owns a pond in Ukraine, Pastor Becky? Did you know that? I love the way they fish here. They don't use a hook, line, and sinker and a pole. They pull the plug on the lake. The water drains out. All the fish are flopping on the bottom. And then they just scoop the fish up, put them in baskets and buckets, and take them to the market, and they sell them. And guess what they have? Money to operate that rehab center for months. And then they fill it back up with water, put some more tilapia in there, and then off it goes again. So you have a strategic plan to keep people from becoming dependent on this. You develop. It's one of the 3 things Global Missions does. Global Missions develops, it resources, it goes where the gospel is not yet. Those 3 things, that's what we do. That's how we spend our time and our resources. Go where the gospel is not yet, the 1040 window. We develop communities and leaders, education, and then we resource them strategically. That's what you've been doing over 120 years. This is nothing new. Same old, same old. We've been following Jesus into the Father's mission for many years. And every year you send out a group of lifelong missionaries like this. Now there are several missionaries here and some old friends. We've known Chuck and Dixie for many years. We planted a church in Chino back in the 1,000 years ago, and we suffered the loss with you, Dixie, of your sweet husband, Chuck. Chuck was a great companion, a friend. We did a lot of work together. But you send out missionaries like this, like Alan Kitty. You send them every year. And then you send out sponsored missionaries. Lifetime missionaries serve 20 plus years. Short-term missionaries, they're missionaries, but they go for a week to 6 weeks to 6 years. And it happens all the time. In just the last couple months, I think we've recruited probably 3 or 4 short-term missionaries who've said, connect me. A young woman up in Nampa, Idaho, just recently, she was sitting at a table with me and Vicki. And we always pray, Holy Spirit, connect us, because we don't know what the Holy Spirit's doing. But he orchestrates this whole thing. So he sets us down alongside a single woman at a table for a bruncheon, and she says, I've been learning Korean. Well, our ears go up. Cross-cultural ministry. And she says, I've got a degree in helping people with disabilities. Our ears go up a little further. And she says, I'm feeling like I'd like to work in another country. Bingo. So guess what? This was just a few months ago. Guess where she's going? She's going to Tonga to work with our Korean missionaries in our clinic there that houses people with disabilities in Tonga. And I could repeat that story with guys who cut down trees, operate heavy equipment, build dams. I mean, that's what we do. And then they pay their own flight and they pay their own expenses, but you provide the structure with what you're going to do today. Without that structure, remember, start with the member, to the district, to the field, to the region, to the general church. All that structure looks a lot like Acts chapter 6. That provides the mission of God through the people of God. It's what we do. You sent Vicki and I to Eurasia. We worked, there's 94 countries in that area of the world, from Spain over to India. And then we went and served in Asia Pacific and spent 15 years on that region. We lived in Australia because it's got the main airports that get you all through Asia. And here's some of your fellow Nazarenes down there hanging out, and you probably recognize some of them as I'm flipping through these pictures. We loved Australia. Alan Kitty came down and served with us there as we needed a president to fill in for one of our presidents who was going on sabbatical, and you guys just did an awesome job. They still talk about Alan Kitty Jones in Australia. Did you know that? After all these years, they honestly do. I'm not stretching it. And they've got the most beautiful birds. These guys are in our backyard, and Vicki would feed them out of her hands. She'd feed this guy Albert, she called him. He'd come in every time he saw our car pull in, and she would feed him, meat, some kind of meat. And by the way, do you guys do alabaster offerings? You've purchased every home that Vicki and I have lived in as missionaries for over 20 years. This is not one of them, okay? I'm showing you an illustration of a Queenslander, okay? This is Alan Kitty, you recognize that kind of it's got a wraparound veranda all the way 3 sides, so you have these beautiful views. We lived actually in a much more poor area, and actually, you guys, when you take your alabaster offering, you probably think, what's this, money gonna do? It's not much. But you put that together with 31,000 other churches around the world, and you're not just building parsonages, you're building schools and hospitals and all kinds of facilities that we need to do mission in. That's what we do. About 5 years ago, the director of Global Missions called Vicki and I. We were getting ready to retire. I was turning that age old, 67. And Vern Ward said, would you consider not retiring and working longer? We've got a new initiative somebody has funded, and we need somebody that can help us put this together. So Vicki and I, for the last 4 years, have been working with the 34 field directors and their spouses in orienting them to their job and their ministry, and then also lifelong learning. So we've developed curriculum. Now, in 2020, something happened in the world in March, remember? And we had an epidemiologist, a Nazarene from the University of Arizona, chairman of the department, tell these people on Zoom, cancel all your flights for 2 years. And it shocked us because we only know how to do ministry face to face. But God taught us how not to waste a crisis. And so we've been meeting every month. We met every month for over 2 years on Zoom for 2 hours. And I would bring somebody in who knew what they were talking about to teach us and help us have a conversation, a global conversation. So as soon as they would take 10 minutes to give an idea, we got into small groups, and these brothers and sisters from around the world in different languages, French, Spanish, different languages, they would talk about what they knew about that subject from their cultural perspective. Do you think that'll change the way you think? If we think the Western way, start talking to a person from the Middle East or Asia, and they think differently, but they're our brothers and our sisters, and we can learn so much from them. And so that's what we've been doing for the last several years. We just went to every other month now, and we just met with all of them at General Assembly. We brought them all together for 3 days, and we spent a wonderful time of fellowship and had over 400 missionaries come in after those 3 days. You helped pay for that. Do you think it'd be important if you were a missionary out somewhere on an island all alone for 2 or 3 years to get together with other missionaries personally? Well, you take care of that. This is what you do. And so we spent 3 wonderful days, and we brought the children in. It was like a big family camp. And the kids had games and fun, and you provided for that. We couldn't do that without you. And nearly 3 million other Nazarenes. Let me give you an illustration of what this looks like during COVID. During COVID in Cambodia, look what your church did. Look what you did. You served hundreds of families. You saw a church that grew. You saw your 61 churches in Cambodia give back 25% of their annual income to global missions. And they said to us over and over, please send more missionaries. University students, 12 of them spent 8 hours on a bus getting to where we were to say, please, can you develop the 24 courses of study that Terry developed? I was on his team 100 years ago, putting together the curriculum, the 24 courses of study that every Nazarene pastor, Pastor Becky, and you and I have taken those 24 courses to graduate. So a district can then say, you're ready to be ordained. The general superintendent lays his hands on us, and we're ordained for ministry in the Church of Nazarene. But that's the kind of thing they're asking for help with university students in Cambodia. We were in this circle of pastors, about 20-some pastors in that room, and I asked them to all share how they came to faith. It took a long time. By the way, before I tell you that, you've been buying bicycles there for $30 and selling back for $15. So these kids could get an education. Education is one of the 4 tracks the Church of the Nazarene has gone down since our inception. Education, compassion, that's why you saw that food in Ukraine, evangelism, loving people into the kingdom, and church planting, developing communities of faith where people can support and lead and do mission together. So that's what you do, and we loan the money because we give part of it because we want them to contribute so we don't create a dependent. We want a sustainable mission plan, not one where we have to keep coming back and say, help, help, help. We want to be going where the gospel is not yet. So it keeps us moving. When I was with them, they shared their testimonies. As I said, there's your field director in the black shirt next to me. And this woman stood up and she said, when I was this age, and I don't see any children here, so I'll just tell you. And by the way, there might be some kids online, so maybe I better not. But anyway, the Khmer Rouge came into her village. She dove into the bushes as she watched everybody in her group lost. Fast forward to when I was there a few years ago, she's sharing how Jesus saved her through the Church of the Nazarene. She's finishing her 24 courses of study and is already a Nazarene pastor in her community. And that's what you do. You just go and help. I mean, I'm a missionary. I come to your village, you've never heard about Jesus, and I say, I've got really good news. The kingdom of God is here. But if you were losing half your children before they're 5 years of age in your country or in your area, what would good news look like? Well, you're looking at it. This is outside the door of your church in Washim, India. And you've done this in thousands and thousands of locations in the majority world, where because you provided clean water, that mother will see her 2 children there in that picture become teenagers and have children of their own, just because you did what you're going to do today. You change reality. You make a difference. All over the world. This is on the other side of the world in the Philippines. Those blue pipes, a district went, spent a month and installed those blue pipes, and suddenly their kids are growing up to be teenagers. I snapped that little girl's picture. She picked up that bucket of water and carried it all the way down the main street of her town. But that little spigot is what you are doing this morning. And you provide safe places for kids to play. God cares about that. You provide hygiene training and care through organic toilets and garbage collection and all kinds of ways. You bring light where there's darkness. You run these children's homes. We call them child development centers because we're developing children. Vicki and I were actually in Illinois a few months back, and I showed this picture. This is in Pune, India. And a young woman came up to us after the service, and she introduced herself. She was about this tall. She said her name, and then she said, I'm 13. I'm in high school here. And she said, when you showed that picture, I wanted to jump out of my seat. I used to live there. She said, I had no parents. I was living on the street. The Church of the Nazarene picked me up, brought me here. gave me food, gave me an education, gave me my little carry package back there in my backpack with all my stuff in it. And then she said, these two people standing next to me are my parents. They came to Pune, adopted me, and now I am going to high school here in my community in Illinois. You think that makes a difference? You know, you can't care for the world, you just care for one person in front of you. You can't care for the world, you can only care for one person at a time. And in doing that, you care for the world. Because we are all connected, made in the image of God. The beautiful image of God. You can never look in the eyes of any human being without seeing God inside, regardless of how messed up they are. And you care so much. Children are one of our 7 strategic things that we want to do. So you have these centers. This one's up in the Chicken Neck area of India, right along Nepal. And going back to Ukraine for a minute, have you heard of the House of James? Anybody been there? Several years back, a working witness team went to Ukraine, and they saw children living in conduits under the road. So Sean here in the black shirt, he saw these kids. He wasn't even a believer at the time. His dad was, and his dad took him on the trip. But that ended up changing Sean's life, because he said those kids need to there were 5-year-olds being taken care of by 12-year-olds. And Sean came back to Tucson, Arizona, and spoke in the Nazarene church there and raised enough money to build that yellow building I just showed you. And he took the first group of kids out of the gutter, and he got a Nazarene pastor and spouse to become their parents. And then you have a beautiful playground, you have a beautiful washing machines and bedrooms and a cafeteria, and it all happens now partially through this. And then Sean built another one and built another one. And now the last time I was there, they had 3 of them with Nazarene pastors taking kids out from underneath. Kids who were being beat up because they had to steal a slice of bread or some corn out of somebody's garden just to stay alive, and yet they were criminals. So easy to look at people and not realize there's a story. There's a story that put them on the street. There's a reason they're in that tent along our freeways. And it's so easy for us to jump in our isolation to a judgment that puts them in a category that God knows they don't deserve. We come back to the United States and we see the need. You can't meet it all, one person at a time. The person in front of you who's God's calling you to love. You run children's centers all over the world. This one's in the ground center of human trafficking. Did you know that you pay through this for a full-time human trafficking director for our world? And we work, you work with everybody. You work with the Vatican to deal with human trafficking issues. And this is your Shechem home. Vicki and I were in a church about 3 months ago, and a young woman came up and she said, when we showed this picture, she said, I just rejoiced because she said, I just got back from there. I spent a month volunteering, helping with kids and people who have been taken off the streets of the Church of the Nazarene who have been caught in human trafficking. We run training centers and training events on human trafficking for young people in several places of the world. I've been a part of those. I've seen them. They change reality. And then you have a strategic plan because you have schools, just like Point Loma Nazarene University, that offer courses to young people to teach them how to deal with the issues of human trafficking. You're looking at 32 graduates in this picture. I spoke at their commencement in Cebu, Philippines. And they had 75 graduates, 32 of them with degrees that address the issues related to human trafficking and helping people become redeemed to God. That's what we do. And you have 52 of these universities and colleges around the world that do this very thing. This young man, speaking of education, Terry, you'll love this because we have what we call the sponsorship program. And we sponsor, some of you probably in this room sponsor children. You've been doing it years, $20 to $30 a month will educate a young person. And this young man in the blue shirt on the right, those are 3 field directors, Bill Kwan, Kafoa Mamora, and Larry West from another country. Larry's from Oklahoma. I don't know where that is. But those 3 brothers, one from Fiji, one from Korea, they're talking to this young man from the Philippines. And Bill was showing us what the Church of the Nazarene had done in this village as a way of thinking about what we could do in other areas. And so he said, we just met this young man walking down the main street of his town. And I asked him, how long have you been sponsored? Over a couple decades by one of you. Now remember, there are thousands of these stories. And I said, what are you studying? He said, medicine. I said, where are you going to practice? I figured he would move to the big city because he could make money. He couldn't that's the main street of town. He can't make money there. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, aren't you going to practice somewhere? This is my home. He said, I'll be the first medically trained person in my village of several thousand people. Do you think that'll change the reality of his village? To have a guy who actually knows what to do with a cut or laceration, or what kind of medicine to distribute. And then you have boards that will oversee all of this educational process. This is one in a creative access area where there are several denominations around this table. They invited me to come and talk with them about using our 24 courses of curriculum to educate their people. So you have Baptists, you have Pentecostals, you have all the kinds of people using your Wesleyan material to teach their pastors. I love it. And we're not in a competition. But let me just stop and pause here. When I was 15, I was flunking out of high school. I was born and raised here in California, up in Concord, Pleasant Hill area. And at 15, I had F's and C's, a couple C's and D's on my report card. And I stepped into the kingdom of God. I went to my college career counselor, who I had never met, the next morning, Monday morning. And I said to him, Mr. Bueller, something happened to me yesterday, and I think I'm going to be working cross-culturally with people the rest of my life. And the people who prayed with me told me I had to go to Pasadena Nazarene College and start this 24, we didn't have them back then, but the course of study to be pastors or missionaries. And Mr. Bueller, I can see it like it was this morning, he hit the table in front of his desk, he leaned back in his chair, and he actually laughed at me. He said, John, you are not college material. Anybody identify with that? I mean, I'm almost 72. Can you imagine? That's stamped in here. I said, Mr. Bueller, I understand what you're thinking. I'm flunking out of high school, but I'm telling you, something happened to me. I am different today than I was last week. Could you help me? So he did. He said, okay. They put me in, I know they wouldn't call it this in Escondido, but they put me in what they call bonehead classes. So for quite a while, I was a bonehead. And a guy named Red, if you're a school teacher, you are on the front line of ministry. Pastors, we are not on the front line of ministry. The lay people are out there on the day-to-day rough and tumble where you are the voice in the hands of God. And so Red, we called him Red because he had bright red hair and he matched it with red tennis shoes. And he let us call him Red, and then he gave us nicknames. And he coached me from an F in algebra to an A in algebra. Because you know what he did with about 11, 12 other students? He sat down alongside of me, and he said, hey, and he gave me my nickname. You wouldn't do this today either, Turkey Nose. That's what he called me. Turkey Nose. Do you see what you did here? Now, he knew my name, but he was trying to have fun in education. And I called him 20-some years later. He was still alive. And I said, you don't remember me, but I'll never forget you. You were a part of God's plan to change my life and maybe the life of some other people. If you're a teacher, I know you don't do this. Don't ever look at somebody and say what they said to me. Oh man, you're never gonna. My pastor one day said, I just thought you were going to go to jail. And I don't blame him. If you knew what my twin brother was up to and I got blamed for, I don't blame him. John Wilcox, you're probably watching maybe online. I hope you get over that temperature, brother. We love you. John and I grew up together on the same district in Northern California. And John knows how you get blamed for what your twin brother did. But anyway, yeah, these are your boards that oversee. These 3 boards here in this room are asking us to develop an educational plan to become the next university of the Church of the Nazarene in Papua New Guinea. And I had the privilege of going there many times, and we talked about that 24 course of study. The Bible college group is in this room, and your nurses teachers training college and your teachers training college are in this room. And they're talking about how do we add a business department, a law department, and become a university recognized by the Papua New Guinea government. That's what we do. And then you develop curriculum. This is Hungarian, one of the most difficult. Vicki and I lived in Hungary for several years, but one of the most difficult languages. That's Nazarene curriculum that is purchased by every denomination in Hungary except for 1 or 2 denominations that decided not to use. But all the denominations in Hungary buy your literature that you have produced, and they teach their children with it. It's just amazing. And you deliver hardbound books. We were on an island that said, you've got to have 5,000, the government said, to give accredited education to the pastors in your training program. You have to have, they gave us a list of things. One of them was 5,000 book library. Well, where's an island going to get 5,000 theology books? Well, remember our connectedness? Remember that network? All those relationships and friends? Vicki just picked up the phone and called Lon Dagley, the librarian from Mid-American Nazarene University. Lon, do you have any spare theology books? How many do you need? We need 5,000. You know what Lon did? He shipped 4,500 books to that island. The government came in and they saw what you had done, because 3 of you then got on a plane. Remember the sponsored short-term missionary? You flew to that island and you spent several weeks cataloging all those books, and you put them on these shelves, and I snapped that picture as a product of what you do. The government came in and saw that on our list, and they stamped it. And now those 50 students on that island taking the 24 courses of study can go on and get a master's degree or a PhD from any university in the world because they're accredited through Sydney College of Divinity. That's the partnerships that we arrange. So now, instead of having a missionary come back there 10 or 15, 20 years from now, we'll have somebody that speaks their language, understands their culture, teach a theology that I could never teach as well as an indigenous person. And that's what we do. And then you have these amazing faculties all over the world. You support some of them? Boy, there's a country we need to pray for. I could spend the whole time on that one country that I just showed you. Here's a group of them graduating from that country in Indiana. Those guys have finished the 24 courses of study and are now Nazarene pastors in the United States in Burmese language. And they're all connected back to that little country in the middle there that's under extreme duress. Some wonderful book of Acts stories come out of that country that I wish we have. I'll come back some other year if I'm still alive and tell you about. Here's another country. This is up right along the Nepal border. And that man, this is 60 pastors in a room. They've never had a class in Wesleyan theology. And Vicki and I were on our knees saying, oh God, help us. John Wilcox was in this area with us. In fact, they surrounded our room with guys with machine guns to protect us from those who had killed pastors in that area for just preaching the gospel. But John can tell you that story some other time if he hasn't. But we're in this room. John might have been there, I don't know. But the guy in the left corner there with the cream-colored shirt, he came up to me between sessions and he said, I've been a witch doctor my whole life. And he said, my 14-year-old son a few years ago got sick. And for 2 years, I tried to heal him, and nothing worked. And I hated Christians. But when my son was dying and the death rattle when it was in his throat, I called the Christians because I didn't know what else to do. And they came and they laid hands on him, and God healed my son. And guess what? He's in the 24 courses of study. You're going to have a Nazarene witch doctor pastor of the Church of the Nazarene in his area of the world. That's what you do. My dad was a farmer. My son's an organic farmer. Imagine this dad, he's never made more than $1 a day. And you paid for his son's 3 years of education in one of our seminaries in Asia. And the son comes back with a cap and gown that you bought and a certificate that says, I finished my 3 years of course of study. Can you imagine the pride? I mean, my dad said, John, are you sure you got this thing right with God and going to Pasadena College? You're flunking out of high school. Dad, I don't know, but man, I want to try. And he got behind me. That dad, I'm sure, got behind his son, and he's as proud as my dad could have been. And you did it. I haven't gotten over it. The impact you are making. And we're doing it together in all kinds of ways. Every one of those 34 fields, you give them a bank account where we can immediately buy water, shovels, tents. I could spend another Sunday just talking about what you've done to relieve pain. Here's toothbrushes and toothpaste in a tsunami area. You paid for that, and I got to give it in the name of Jesus. Jesus said, just give a cup of cold water. In this area, it was illegal to say Jesus. You could get shot, arrested. And yet when I left there, the imam, through an interpreter, said, if there's any more white Americans, he said, I've never met a white person, I've never met an American, I've never met a Christian. I never told him I was a Christian. He figured it out. He said, tell him to tell the people wherever he came from to please send more like you. I never could say Jesus. I could just be his St. Francis, preach the gospel at all times, if necessary. Use words. We try and convert people through our intelligence. That's not how people get converted. You don't argue them into the kingdom. They come into the kingdom because they love God. You see what the tsunami did here? All those trees, those were, 75-foot palm trees. 150 foot of water came in there, they said. The woman there in the brown shirt, she lost her entire family. That was her village I just showed you. We went out to it. You bought her a ticket because nobody was left in her family except an uncle who would not have her because he thought she was cursed now. You put her on a plane, flew her to the capital city, and one of you adopted her into your family. Now, she was not a Christian, but you didn't care. You just loved her. You can see she's of another religion. That's what you do. You just help. 14,000 Syrians in these tents. You were there on the front line in Greece, right along the border of Macedonia. Does that strike a bell? Paul and the offering and all that? You know the story. You were there, just trying to care. We prayed with I don't know how many people, hundreds of people with our team, our prayer team. And refugees, God is on the side of the poor. That's why compassion is one of the key things of our church. He's on the side of the outsider, the underdog, the oppressed, the forgotten, the disregarded. And he's got you in some dangerous places. Alan, Kitty, Terry, Joan, you know this. Here's one of our friends. This guy here helped me with my PowerPoint in one of our Asian countries, and he went back home and preached the gospel. And just for that, here they are throwing him in the back of a police car. And they burnt down the churches. Because we're online, I'm not going to say where this is because it's very dangerous there right now. But you have Nazarene pastors in jail every day of the week. That's probably not news. The persecuted church is something we need to keep in front of our prayer. Because sometimes prayer is the only way these things are getting taken care of. Even missionaries, they go out there and they say, what can I do? The government's locked my guys up. There was a place in Southeast Asia where where one of our field directors told me that a pastor that he had met was thrown in jail every Monday morning. I said, how'd that happen? He said, well, he would preach on Sunday, so they threw him in jail well, how did he get out and preach the next day? Well, they let him out on Friday because there weren't enough guards to keep all the prisoners, so they just let him out, and then he goes back and preaches, and this has been going on for a year. And Ron asked this pastor, how do you handle the stress? And the pastor said, what do you mean stress? He said, I feel like I'm in partnership with Jesus and Paul, who said, I praise God I'm in this prison because I get to preach to the prisoners Monday through Friday, and I get to go home, be with my family, and preach to my congregation on the weekends. And then I go in on a plane, and I get on a plane, and I go out. And he's there suffering. And I go back to a nice meal and my privileged spaces. God, help me to have compassion and to have the humility of Christ and the love of Christ. I'm going to finish with this. Do I have 5 more minutes? Okay. I don't want to bore you to death, but Nazarene Hospital, one of the most effective things Vicki and I have seen you do. Alan, Kitty, have you been here? Papua New Guinea, Kujip? No. 60 years ago, we had nothing in the jungle of Papua New Guinea. Nothing in Papua New Guinea. You put a single woman on a boat, and 3 months later, she lands in Port Moresby. You put a couple from the United States, Wanda and Sydney Knox, on a boat. They ended up there in the same place. And you put a couple from Australia. They went up there. The Bromleys preached for 7 years in the jungle of that valley, and not one convert. And then he rang the bell every time he preached, and people would come in the bushes. He could see them. In 7 years, a chief came out of the bush, knelt, and said, I want to follow your God. Well, you fast forward from that moment to today, you have tens of thousands of Papua New Guinean Nazarenes in that country. And not only that, you have this incredible network of churches and programs that are developing people. And it would not happen without what you're doing this morning with those other Nazarene churches around the world. And so I flew in, I snapped this picture one day. You own all those white colored buildings, the tops. And in the middle of that big building is the hospital. You serve 61,000 people in that hospital every year. And they come out of the tribal areas all around there. They drive for 100 miles to try and get there, or walk, usually. And then right across the street is the Wanda Knox Memorial Prayer Chapel. It's actually a church. That river on the right, you'll want to pay attention to that because you own that. And all those white little speckled buildings, those are your places you built for nurses and doctors and missionaries over the years. You've got about 50 missionaries there with kids. And I've had the privilege of being there many times, developing the educational side. Oh, by the way, I should have told you, the funny thing about God's plan, my story, is the last several years I was the regional, that's for all of Asia Pacific. We have 15 schools. I was the director of education for that entire region. God has a sense of humor. That's why I was in P&G. And you own these classes. About half of them are from men and half are women, and the Australian government pays every year for about 20 graduates. They pay for their entire 3 years of nursing education. You have medical surgeons there. You know these folks, some of them. Ben on the left there, the young guy, he's got his son there. He lived in Papua New Guinea as a kid. His dad was a surgeon there for over 30 years. And Ben is now a surgeon. And his vision is to do what they had a vision for 50 years ago, to create nurses for Papua New Guinea. He says, my vision is to create surgeons for Papua New Guinea of indigenous people. If you're a nurse and you want to go to P&G and serve in our hospital, we can't get you a visa. We have too many nurses. You've populated the entire country with people educated at the Nazarene Nursing School. It's the only country in the world where I know where you go and you get in the line for the passport to be stamped, and on the left side there's all the commoners. I kind of chuckle at that. And then on the left side or the right side there's this sign that says VIPs and missionaries. Well, why would they do that? Because they appreciate what you have done to change the pain in their culture to joy. by sending people like Bill and Ben and their spouses. John Wilcox and Debbie know this woman because they discipled her in Santa Cruz, California, the woman in the white. And she is now a medical doctor, surgeon. She went as a volunteer. And remember I said there are lifers. She's just recently, you've made her a lifer through this. You now pay her salary. She was initially funded by her family and friends. Now you take care of that. She doesn't have to worry about raising money to eat. And she's been under a lot of stress lately, had to take a leave because of COVID and all that's done. By the way, you know the Smells and Baws? Some of you will recognize, that's Harmon and Cindy on the left there. And this young guy, imagine, what does God see for this up-and-coming surgeon or teacher or this young man? Is he going to be a nurse? And you did something about the fact that they lose electricity several times a day. You're on the phone or you're doing a surgery and you have no tools to finish this up, and people die on your surgery table. Wouldn't you want to change that? Well, you did. Several years ago, you invested $3 million in partnership with the Australian government, Papua New Guinea government, Church of the Nazarene, and you built this dam that keeps that generator going 24/7. The kids think the dam is a swimming hole, and the mom loves it because she doesn't have to do the laundry. Just hangs the clothes up. And Vicki and I spoke on an island several years ago, and a woman came up to me and Vicki and said, my husband spent several weeks with a backhoe building that canal, a volunteer missionary, short-term missionary. And I got to know Graham Shepherd. You know the Shepherds. And every one of your surgical units and care units has that sign. I love that sign because it just sums up everything you and I do through global missions. Every one of your units are always packed to the gills. You go there early in the morning and there are 200 people waiting to get into that hospital. And you make sure every one of these nurses have 3 4-unit courses, 12 units of evangelism and church planting. Now, I don't know any place in the world where to be a nurse, you have to learn how to love people into the kingdom, or to gather people into a fellowship like this, church planting. But every one of those nurses goes out equipped to do evangelism, a Wesleyan approach to loving people into the kingdom. And you own that. And so throughout Papua New Guinea, you have churches like this planted by a nurse that you educated. Kafoa, the field director there, sent me this picture of the most recent Nazarene church. You need to have a building to have a church? They don't. I spoke at their commencement not long back, about 1,000 people there, and just a wonderful time. The commissioner of Australia government, because they support about 20 of our students, as I said. And this young woman was magna cum laude. I knew her name because she sat on the platform with me, Lydia. And when we were I was flying out of the country in the second airport, she was there, and we met each other at the bag exchange. And I said, where are you going, Lydia? She said, I'm going home. I said, what are you going to do? She said, well, you guys have educated me to love people in Jesus' name. I'm just going to go back. We have no clinic there. We have no medical care. There are 832 languages in Papua New Guinea. Languages, not dialect. Languages, 832. We don't have any city in the United States that has that many languages. And she's going back into one of those language-specific areas with the gospel to love people. That's what Jesus taught us to do. Say this with me, would you? And when we get to the word Samaria, let's stick in there Escondido. It sounds real good after Samaria, doesn't it? And you're continuing to write the book of Acts. You really are. I wish we had more time to tell the stories, but we're out of time. So let's say it together. You will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes upon you, and you'll be my witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, Escondido, and to the ends of the earth. Jesus said, I will build my church. So what's your mission? You have a mission, did you know that? It might be care for grandkids. That's the mission Vicki and I are headed into in 8 weeks. I retire, that's our mission. Making Christ-like disciples. We've got 7 of them. What's your mission? You may not be a missionary that has cross-cultural gifts, but you are missional. That's one of the 3 core values of the Church of the Nazarene. And missions is what the Holy Spirit orchestrates. It's what He does through you, a movement of God by His people. Theo is 95 years old. You guys know Theo from Perth? I've known her since probably 40 years, huh? Yeah. Last time I was with her, she complained. She's 95. She said, Pastor John, they've taken away my driver's license. I said, you know, that's probably a pretty good idea. She said, yes, but I thought I lost my mission. She said, you know how for years I have driven to the Outback area with the Korean Nazarene missionaries, and I've taken food and clothing and toys for the kids. There's very few men out there, all women and children, and spend the day. She said, without my license, I thought I couldn't do it anymore, but then I discovered this thing called Uber. I just call and he shows up. He's got a turban on his head. He's from the Middle East. Every one of the taxi drivers. And she said, you taught us through the book The Camel how to love people of that other religion. And so she said, I read that book and I studied it up. And every time I get into the Uber car, after they help me load the boot of their car with all my stuff, she said, I say to them my name, and then I say, what's your name? And then I say, do you have a spouse? Do you have children? And I write their names down. And then for about a 45-minute to an hour drive, depending on where they go, hour and a half, they go out there, and she says, I've got a captive audience the whole time. And I just love them. I don't argue with them. I don't try and prove Jesus to them. The Holy Spirit is in that car. And Muhammad is the one that said Jesus is greater than I am in the Quran. So I just ask questions. And then they get out of the car and they help me unload and they kick the ball with the kids, and we get back in the car an hour, 2, 3 hours later where the meter's running. She didn't tell me that, but she's paying for that meter. We get back home, and then before she gets out of the car, she says, can I pray for you and your wife and children? And she said she's never had an Uber driver. She does this every week. Never had an Uber driver say, no, don't pray for me. She said, Pastor John, I thought I lost my mission when I lost my license. God gave me and expanded my mission. 95. This guy's 11. He lives in another country too. It's called Idaho. You don't want to go there. It's where Nazarenes go to die. I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't have said that. I'm sorry. That's terrible. Half my family lives up there. I tease them. This guy, Jeremy, he heard stories like this by another missionary, not me, but his heart was so impacted by Jesus that he said to his mom, I got to do something. You know, Jesus said, don't just love in word, do something. Live out your relationship with me. And so Jeremy did that. He said, Mom, let's go to Costco. They bought hot dogs and Cokes and went to a sports field, and he sold $248 worth that he sent to Sao Paulo, Brazil for the children. His mom helped him make that sign. So I don't know what your mission is. You sent me and Vicki. We want to thank you. You're going to take a love offering. I think, Al, you can come now if you want to. And Vicki and I just want to say thanks. Your offerings have gone for the projects and many more that I haven't mentioned. Block building machines. John Wilcox knows about that. He led up this region's team to take about 20 teams to Manipur, India, to build a district center that housed a clinic, child development center, a church, a district office. And John did that. When you're looking at John, you're looking at a missional man and his wife. We tried to get them into other world mission areas many times, but we failed. But he did a great job. So thank you for your support. Vicki and I want to thank you. And there's some of you want to use this little thing that's happened during COVID. Just aim your camera at it and tap it, and you'll see our bio on there. But thank you. What you're going to do here, you're making a difference. May God bless you in Escondido.